It's Monday, and you know what that means. Jersey First TV proudly brings to you the latest edition of Real Talk. And yes, I am New Jersey's premier award-winning journalist, Top 50 Latino, as voted on by the Latino Spirit Online magazine, along with the United States Latino Affairs Initiative. And without a doubt, ladies and gentlemen, I'll continue to be the weapon of mass disruption in Garden State media because my level of honesty is necessary in this era of deception. Yes, it's me, Fernando Uribe. Happy Monday to you all. I want to thank you all for joining us here on the 29th of January as we're wrapping up the first month here in 2024. I want to thank you all for tuning in from wherever and however you may be doing so right now on Facebook Live via StreamYard, also on the Jersey First YouTube page, along with Twitch and all of our other great social media platforms. Folks, I cannot say enough about the support we continue to get on all of our platforms. And once again, if you haven't done so already, please like us on Facebook, Real Talk with Fernando Uribe, along with Jersey First. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Of course, click the subscribe button on YouTube, and you'll be notified of all the outstanding content brought to you every single week by Jersey First TV. And of course, whether you get your podcasts on Spotify or SoundCloud, we're listening to music all the time, folks, whether it's our playlist when we're doing laundry, making dinner, having friends over, whatever the case may be, we're on Spotify or SoundCloud. Well, guess what? Download Jersey First and take all of our great programming with you anywhere at any time. And ladies and gentlemen, you know what? I say it every single week. I just cannot emphasize it enough how proud I am to be on the dream team of Garden State Media. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. It's always Jersey First TV, educating and advocating for the residents of this wonderful state, of course, as it's getting unbearably expensive and suffocating us with taxes and everything else. It's still a great state, folks, and I'm proud to live in it. We at Jersey First TV continue to be your voice against sort of the darkness coming out of Trenton every single day. Brand new episodes air every week, of course, on Thursdays. You can check out all the wonderful content brought to you by Elizabeth Nader and her amazing show, The Nader Narrative, along with Bridging the Gap, hosted by AJ Malillo and Stephen Rombolo, two of my favorite law students. Again, folks, let me tell you something. Those are two guys I'll definitely want to hire as my lawyers in the future. I want to check out their great programming on Thursdays. And of course, every Monday, folks, whether 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. Eastern time, you can check out the latest edition of Real Talk right here with Jersey First. Folks, we have a great guest coming up in just a moment. You definitely want to stick around for final thoughts because I'm going to have a lot to say about what I would call the newest version of the Three Stooges in New Jersey politics and media. Of course, I go after lots of journalists every single week, but this week I got a lot to say about Ernesto Rivera Batiste, Joe Blaitler, and Leroy, what's his name here? I'm sorry, Leroy. Let me get the name correctly because I don't want to mess it up here. Filipowski here on the show. I'm gonna have a lot to say about these three guys. So get ready, folks. Buckle up because it's gonna be fun in just a little while. So you definitely want to stick around for final thoughts. It's time to cook. But in the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, one of the things I take considerable pride in on this program, of course, is, when I think about, I think about taxes. I think about the business climate in New Jersey. I think about what's, sort of going on in our business climate. And folks, without a doubt, it's something that means a lot to me because you know what? I'm a taxpayer, I'm a homeowner, and I'm someone that, once again, cares about what's going on in New Jersey politics, but also in our business climate and for our business community. And what a better guy to talk to tonight than the distinguished president and CEO of the Hudson County Chamber of Commerce. And to the best of my knowledge, I know he's a big fan of this show and yours truly, folks. He's the amazing Emory Edwards joining us tonight here on Real Talk. Emory, how are you, sir?
Good, Fernando. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. Happy New Year. I haven't seen you, I think, since last summer.
Yeah, same to you.
Yeah, thank you. And, it's funny. Election season's always ongoing where I'll see you at some event or anything. But tonight's not the night for politics per se. Let's get down to business, literally and figuratively. But folks, again, if you're not familiar, certainly the Hudson County Chamber of Commerce, you can find more information about them at their website, HudsonCountyChamber.org. And certainly, folks at the Hudson County Chamber of Commerce, they're committed to being collaborative, certainly responsive, effective, of course, providing an online chamber directory, marketing, leads, helping out with tourism, everything else, folks. These are the great things that we have come to rely on when it comes to the Hudson County Chamber of Commerce. So, Mr. President, I have to ask you though, what drove you? I know you've been involved in the community for some time. I know you've been working in nonprofit for as long as I've known you, Emory. But really, what was the epiphany to start pursuing employment with the Hudson County Chamber of Commerce, and what drew you to this outstanding organization?
Well, the Hudson Chamber of Commerce is here to help the economy grow and to help improve the quality of life here in Hudson County and throughout the region. I've been on the board. Before I was president, I was on the board for 7 years. Wow. And I didn't grow up here, but Hudson County's been my home for almost 30 years. I love it here. It's a great place to be. It's a great place to do business. And quite frankly, you mentioned my nonprofit commitment. It's the same commitment to the community I bring now. And nonprofits here make it go as well. We have over 100 nonprofit members in the chamber, and they're an important part of the economy and important part of our quality of life.
Emory, one of the things that, obviously, how involved I've been in philanthropy for some time, obviously not as much as you, and working in nonprofit work as well. One of the privileges I've had is working with the statewide Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and certainly a shout out to Carlos Medina and Luis de la Hoz, the president and the executive directors, respectively, of that great organization. Certainly the Latino Chamber of Commerce with Darwin Roman, another great individual, service member. And of course, what you're doing locally. And conversations I have all the time. And, I try not to get too political with them. They know how I lean. But it just seems, though, Emory, that, Hudson County, very much like the other 20 counties in the state, are experiencing some difficult times here. Again, we're out of COVID already. We've been out of COVID for some years now. And it just seems that whether it's in hospitality, other industries, New Jersey's, at least in my eyes, New Jersey's still lagging behind and really fully recovering, and business is sort of being back to normal. Am I imagining this, or am I just sort of, hearing things from different people?
Well, I will tell you, I think Hudson County, New Jersey is a great place to do business, and we have some great thriving businesses. In some respects, I think, I'm very pleased that the governor kept his commitment to eliminate the commercial tax surcharge. That surcharge on our businesses was not helping anything. And I think, to your point, there is a bit of a disconnect between what people say and reality. Like, we can see that our unemployment is up about a point higher than the national average. So clearly not everyone is thriving in the community as much as we hope to get it that way. And there's some other challenges facing us. The high cost of living is a problem. It's an important problem for people trying to attract employees, people living here who are struggling a bit. And so I think there is kind of an overall, as wonderful as the community is, there is a high cost of living that bleeds into everything else.
Well said there. Folks, if you just joined us right now, it's 6:09 here on the East Coast. And my guest at this very moment is the distinguished president and CEO of the Hudson County Chamber of Commerce, folks. The great Emory Edwards join us here on Real Talk. Emory, you mentioned the high cost of living. Obviously, that sort of boils down to Trenton. And obviously, it's budget season. And we know that the legislature will be there contemplating what to do with taxation and business, the business climate and everything else, property taxes and so forth. What's been your experience that you can share with us about talking to legislators, both in the Assembly and the Senate, about any grants or any assistance that the chamber can get from Trenton? Because again, this isn't self-funded, folks. Money doesn't fall from the trees. Money doesn't grow on trees, despite what some people in Trenton think. So, for example, organizations like yours and your executive board that works so hard, I can't imagine sometimes the strain and duress you guys must be under when it comes to funding and everything else, because I'm sure collaborating with Trenton isn't always easy.
Well, I do think, business is not the goose that laid the golden egg in many respects. I would say 80% of our chamber members are small businesses, many minority-owned businesses, woman-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses, and they struggle on a daily basis. I think Trenton, in many ways, works to be responsive, but by the same token, sometimes there can be expensive challenges or changes that really fall on business owners. You know, the surcharge on property tax, commercial businesses that I talked about a minute ago was really, made us the most expensive state tax-wise in the country. We're not in that position anymore. Not that we're not expensive, but we're less expensive. That's a milestone you're looking to get to. There are a number of programs, again, from the state where businesses can access loans, get advisory consulting, get grants to expand, to build, to expand their workforce. But again, we don't really want to see that vicious circle where money is going out the door only to come back in the door a different way. And frequently there's less of it coming back in. So we need to really change the climate here.
Well, let's sort of delve into that. Let me put on my academic hat for a moment. Again, I wear many hats, as people know. But, the first thing that comes to mind, Emory, and again, I'm just sort of curious here, when you're talking to business owners, certainly the surcharge you mentioned, I think probably one of the difficulties that they have. And especially, again, we're seeing such an exponential spike in Hispanic-owned businesses. I mean, again, census data will tell you that people like me and my family and others will perhaps be the majority, probably the next 20 years, if not less. And not just in New Jersey, but I would say around the United States. And more Hispanics, Latinos, Latinas collectively are owning businesses, whether it's hospitality, whether it's real estate offices, whether it's titles, mortgages, just a plethora of different industries, I think, are drawing Hispanics, Latinos, and Latinas in collectively. But having said that, I'm sure that whether it's high cost of rent, space allowed, development, I mean, what are you hearing are some of the biggest pet peeves that business owners will tell you about? Like, listen, I mean, I'm doing okay. I could be doing better if such and such happened. Are you hearing these things? And certainly, like, what's your response when you have these conversations?
Of course. And I think, to your first point, Hudson County is 43% Hispanic Latino. And that's an important number to know. I think to some degree, having people's hearts and minds in the same place is really, truly key and important. Like, for example, there are a number of programs for Hispanic, Black-owned businesses, other minority-owned businesses. But you look at the most recent disparity report that came out of the state, where still less than 1% of all state contracts are reaching the Latin community. It's a big problem. You can kind of see the disparities, whether it's intentional or unintentional. You can see the real discrepancy in how people are being funded or how people are getting access to contracts that can grow their businesses. I think some of the issue is access. For example, the SBDC or some of the other programs at the state, the Business Advisory or the Business Action Center, right? There are a lot of resources out there. Are people getting the knowledge base? It's kind of why I'm really proud to have our partnership with the statewide Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, because we do have a partnership with them. Getting the word to our business owners and people who work in the various industries around here, especially the smaller ones who could benefit the most, they're not getting the word. And so whether it's just like, oh, here's an access to some expertise, or this is how you get a line of credit, or this is how you present yourself to a bank, it's important. Last fall, for example, Hola New Jersey, which is a program that we operate here, was all about how to access capital. Because quite frankly, as interest rates continue to skyrocket and money tightened, the first people not to get money or to be lent money, of course, are minority business owners. And the Hispanic community is really at the top of that list as well. And so teaching people how to present themselves, where to go, how to put their best foot forward is really an important service that we offer and something that's really important to this community.
Emory, when we think about, I mean, listen, I do it all the time, whether it's philanthropy, whether it's journalism, whether it's academia, I love going to networking parties. And, at some point you have to schmooze with business leaders, you have to schmooze with legislators, elected officials. Do you ever just feel sometimes it's a burden having to do that? Again, it's not to say that your position as president and CEO of the chamber is predicated on that, but it almost seems exhausting. And the reason I say that is because I feel exhausted because every year is an election year. So I'm getting invites to parties all the time, not just, schmoozing with elected officials and legislators and everything else at the local and state level, but it's business leaders, it's executives, it's CEOs, and that can get exhausting for someone like me who's not even in, your line of work per se. And I find it to be exhausting. How do you cope with it? What's the best coping mechanism for you, man? Because again, I know I see you at events. You have to sort of, again, speak with elected officials because I'm sure they want to pick your brain. You want to pick their brain. On a scale of 1 to 10, though, bro, how exhausting is this sometimes?
I love that question. I think the person to ask that to would be my wife or my son.
Okay.
Right? More than me. I think it's a personality thing to some degree, right? I mean, I enjoy it. It can be exhausting. I think I spent Saturday, on the sofa most of the day, right? But
that's good.
That's important. I think, when you talk to our members, for example, they basically are looking for one thing. They want to grow their business. That's number one. That's why you join a chamber of commerce. But they want to do it in 3 different ways. One of the most important things is, connecting. And we talk about connecting, empowering, and advocating. So these connections are truly important. A lot of, I'm lucky. I get to see this from a different vantage point. But if you're on Bergen Line Avenue, if you're in the Heights, if you're in Bayonne, if you're in West Hudson, it's very isolating sometimes. So
Sure.
For the small business, they may not know their peers. They may not have connections with their legislators or their local officials. It's truly important that they can get out there and meet each other because it's not just about, oh, hi, nice to meet you. It's about growing your network so you have someone to call if you have a question. It's about getting your question answered. If you talk to a local official, like on February 1st, we have a Employer Legislative Council in Hoboken, where we're going to be talking to Councilwoman Emory. It's important for merchants and retailers and restaurants and companies to have access to their local officials at every level so that they don't feel that isolation. To me, I get jazzed up. I like it. To my family in the evenings and the mornings for breakfast and maybe not so much all the time. But I get a lot of energy from it.
No, listen, I'm with you, man. And I enjoy these events. I think you know how much I love networking and being out there. And I think it's fair to say there's a different reaction with Emory Edwards walks into a room and Fernando Uribe walks into a room. I think it's at times very different reactions.
Yes, everybody flocks to Fernando Uribe.
I don't know about that. I'll say this: nobody rolls their eyes when you walk into the room. I think I'll leave it at that. I mean, I get a lot of eye rolls and stares. I don't think you ever get that, Emory, to be fair.
Not from me.
Well, not for you. I appreciate it.
I've known you for 15 plus years.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, our rapport has been great. But certainly I think that there isn't one eye roll in the room when you walk in. I'll say that. But folks,
well,
you're more than welcome. It's 6:18 here, folks, on the East Coast. Again, if you just joined us, click that share button. Sharing is caring. As my guest tonight is the distinguished president and CEO of Hudson County Chamber of Commerce, Emory Edwards, join us here on Real Talk. Emory, when we think about, it's interesting you bring up Bergen Line Avenue. I was out last week and ran into a developer, and we were sort of he was sort of picking my brain about the area. I was doing the same, and I look at Bergen Line Avenue, excuse me, and I look at, yes, we're seeing development. We're seeing a brand new building, for example, right on the border of West New York and Union City, right across the light rail. Certainly a very convenient piece of real estate if you're renting there. Skyrocketing rents are not just affecting, couples or people that are working in Jersey City, Hoboken, Manhattan, but skyrocketing rents, though, Emory, are also affecting, I think, the nearby businesses. I mean, I think of Noches de Colombia, the local Dunkin' Donuts, even though their coffee's awful. I think of, Quick Check, or I think of the Wendy's, or even going further south on Bergen Line into Union City, or even further north. It just seems like, yes, there's foot traffic everywhere. Certainly there's a T-Mobile here, an AT&T there, a Verizon here and wherever. And yes, there's commerce everywhere, but it just seems like maybe, again, I'm not even trying to use COVID as excuse. It just seems like commercial avenues like that, Central Avenue, for example, in Jersey City in the Heights, maybe Broadway in Bayonne. Um, Again, I can even imagine the challenges these business owners have with not just rent skyrocketing for an apartment, but I think for square footage as well. What are you hearing about these challenges?
It's a huge problem, and I think you're unpacking something that we have to talk about. And I'll just give you a crazy example. To me, it's crazy. A couple years ago, and this is where you and I are on the same page. When the Jersey City public schools raised property taxes in Jersey City on property owners about a third, right? I think my property taxes went up 36% when you got through with it. And all of a sudden, you start seeing small businesses suffer. You hear restaurants are losing business, et cetera. All of a sudden, I was talking to a city council member who told me that they were working on a package, a restaurant recovery package, because business was down. And of course, my comment was, give me back the money and maybe I can afford to eat out. So I think there's a certain sense of unreality sometimes, because to take that much money out of the hands of people and then wonder why businesses aren't thriving because people can't afford to shop or eat out, and do basic things, entertainment. To me, that's crazy, as I said, as I started this answer. We've got to move from a cycle of where people can get what they can get, and kind of that investment in the neighborhood. They're good actors, they're bad actors. There are a lot of people who think, let's make the community as strong as we can make it. That's kind of why we put economic growth and quality of life together, because you can't have a good quality of life without a strong business community, and you cannot have a strong business community where the quality of life is suffering. The two go hand in hand. And getting people who understand that, understanding that raising the rent will mean that your cost of the products will go up that people are buying. I don't think people understand that all the time. It's getting to be a bigger and bigger problem. At the same time, people are feeling all this pressure because, you can have coffee delivered to your house is, more easily sometimes as leaving the house and going down and buying, from your local coffee shop. So they're getting tremendous pressure, especially retailers and others. There's so much competition, and it's just not competition on Central Avenue. The competition is coming from Nebraska and Iowa and all these other states where people can get anything for cheaper or easier. But the dollars that aren't spent here don't go back to the neighborhood. And I think, doing the shop local, eat local, give local is important for us. And it keeps the money local, it keeps people employed, it keeps the money in the neighborhoods.
Certainly. And Emory, let me ask you this, because I would argue one dynamic about stunting economic growth to some extent and also hurting the community. And we saw it during COVID to some extent. And I just feel that a lot of businesses are sort of still taking advantage. And I would argue that price gouging is still very serious. I remember like last week, I was walking on Burger Line. I had to buy some Scotch tape, and I'm very, very cost effective when I need to be. And I'll go to a dollar store, and obviously, not the friendliest of employees there sometimes. And when I walk in there and I look at it, I'm like, wait a second, like you need to change the name of the store. There's nothing for $1 here. I mean, buying like a simple apparatus of Scotch tape and it's like 2 and change. I'm like, wait a second. When did the store change into like $2 power instead of dollar power? Like, what's going on here? And like the first words out of my mouth, again, because I'm a smart ass, is like, oh Jesus, inflation. Oh, thanks, Joe Biden. And I'll just, because I'm a smart ass, man, I'll say that. And of course, the owner knows me and chuckles along, whatever. But I just think, though, Emory, that price gouging remains a serious problem, especially in a lot of retail. To some extent, I think in hospitality, we're seeing food. I mean, obviously, food prices continue to skyrocket. Going out, I went out with my significant other last few weekends, and I kind of when I look at the bill, I'm like, wait a second. I mean, who ordered lobster here? And we both laugh and chuckle when we look at the bill, right? And I look at the bill, and I just sort of think about, man, like these restaurants and retailers. I get it, whether it's rent or competition, as you alluded to. But man, I in my heart, I still believe price gouging is a problem but it's hard to regulate that, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure I would necessarily use the word price gouging. Um, I think if you look at most restaurants, for example,
Sure.
they all have a very narrow profit margin.
Yeah.
They're struggling to stay open. Most of our local restaurants are feeling significant pressure. You can look in downtown Jersey City and see the recent restaurant closures in one of the most affluent areas in Jersey City, in Hudson County, and they're still struggling. Is it foot traffic? Is it rents are high? Is it that food prices are expensive? The cost of labor? It all adds up. So I think sometimes the experiences that people are getting it all adds up into a more expensive menu cost, while owners sometimes are struggling and wait staff are struggling because if people aren't in, they're not getting tips, they're not getting paid as well. So I do think, for example, and I think this is one of the reasons why the Chamber supports this nonprofit community so much. There are areas where access to certain goods and products are hard to come by. There are food deserts in certain neighborhoods. And if you don't have a car, if you can't afford, the 15% raise on your NJ Transit bus, you walk. And I think, sometimes you may see a few bad actors raise their prices because people can't go anywhere else to comparison shop or things like that. But I do think for the most part, you kind of look at the overall climate, and people really are struggling, even if you're paying $2 for tape. When you add up all their costs and the cost of tape that they're paying, it becomes a challenge.
No, it certainly does. And I think, listen, your point is excellent when it comes to looking at, again, especially in hospitality and restaurants. I personally know an owner that had to close down that's been a great staple for a few years. And it's really challenging, though, Emory, because you look at what's working, what isn't working. Is it the menu? Is it parking? Is it the cost of food? Is it the cost of, to your point about labor and staffing, right? I mean, we're seeing the minimum wage go up in New Jersey, right? I think I believe at the end of the lame duck session in 2018, the legislature voted to raise the minimum wage in New Jersey to $15 an hour. And of course, that went up incrementally between 2018 and the last phase took effect a few weeks ago. January 1st of 2024 is when we would see ultimately $15 an hour for the minimum wage in New Jersey. But that still doesn't address the problem, though, right? Because we could raise the minimum wage to $20 an hour, though, man. And it still is not addressing, again, the cost of living, again, rents, food. I mean, people oftentimes have to kind of make decisions about, well, I need to pay the rent and maybe I'm limited with food. And, I was just having this discussion over the weekend with some friends. They came over to watch pro wrestling. I know, don't judge. I know, watching pro wrestling. But, we were talking about, like, at one time, though, Emory, if you earned $100,000 in New Jersey, well, let's say you were a single male or female, or let's say you were a married couple, like, you were considered wealthy at one point, maybe 10 years ago. That's not the case anymore. I think if you're making $100,000 in New Jersey, I can't call you wealthy anymore. I mean, you're doing better than other people, but I can't call you wealthy either because, again, just the cost of living, the gas tax, rents, property taxes. And that's trickling down into our business communities as well. I think business owners are seeing the crunch and saying, like, if I was earning this profit margin a decade ago, I'm living pretty. That's not the case anymore. And it just seems like there's really, like, no magic wand to sort of alleviate this.
I think, for example, people do have, $15.13, $15.13 an hour is the current minimum wage, right? You still struggle, I think, is your point, to get by.
Yeah.
One of the things, though, I would like to fix in terms of Chamber of Commerce and the broken record is every time I hear when you say things like that, people say, oh, we need this, we need that. We'll get more money out of the business community. Let's go ask them for more. Let's raise the taxes. Let's do all this stuff. It just drives costs up for everybody.
Yeah.
So if you raise, and this is like, for example, here's a good Jersey City example, the right to counsel. The Chamber of Commerce is not necessarily against the right for tenants to have some sort of representation if they need to with the landlord, if they have a problem. Why are you going to put that through potentially an illegal tax on real estate developers or homeowners are trying to make an improvement to their property, or multifamily owners are trying to keep their heads above water. But you keep shifting the burden, and a lot of people get very excited about the right to cancel, for example, like, they don't understand that the number one reason why people are having problems with landlords is they can't afford the rent, right? But putting a tax on a property owner or a real estate developer is only going to have the net effect of making the rent that much higher. So I think there's this idea that if we need money or we have a problem, we'll just keep going back to businesses, not knowing that it drives the cost of living up, it drives rents up for everybody. These costs are passed along. And everybody is probably feeling the pain, not for nothing, even the developer, especially some of the smaller property owners who have apartments or have a multifamily and renting half of it out. These costs are real and the impact is real. You can look across the river in New York and see all the things that happen to small landlords. Like, I think there was a line, one of the city council members, not here, but in New York City, was like, well, if they go out of business, good. They should go out of business. They're bad business people. And you're thinking, well, you can't collect rents. You couldn't collect rents during COVID. You had to make your mortgage payment, et cetera, et cetera. There are a lot of really good actors who are doing the best they can, who can't afford to stay solvent. But like when you tax a business and wonder why the merchandise goes up, or when you tax a developer and wonder why your rent goes up, I just don't think everybody sees it. It's right in front of you, but a lot of people don't want to look at that.
Emory, listen, bingo, you swung, you hit it out of the ballpark with that. And that's, I think, again, not to get overly political here, but this is much of the divide that exists, I think, when it comes to talking about business, especially with a lot of my peers in the liberal media here in New Jersey, who I know never took an economics course, and it shows with their rhetoric. I'm the only one really talking about stuff like this. And I'm glad I have you on to sort of support. And I just want to piggyback on what you said. I mean, that's exactly right. It just seems like for many, again, I don't want to get over political with you because it's not a political topic per se, but for many of my colleagues on the left and a lot of, left-leaning activists, it always seems to be like, well, tax the rich or tax businesses, they can afford it. And this is how we can, afford certain things. No, folks, once you do that, whether you're taxing Walmart or taxing Pepito's Bodega on, Central Avenue, guess what? Once you're suffocating people with taxation, at some point that trickles down. And the consumer is the one that, at the end of the day, that pays, whether it's cost and services, everything else. And I just wish more people understood that. Again, you don't need an MBA from Rutgers and the business school to understand this simple premise. And it just I almost want to beat my head on a wall when I talk to a lot of my colleagues that are very left-leaning that don't understand this. I don't think it's a political issue. It just seems commonsensical. Like, you can't suffocate businesses because sooner or later, once you drive them out, what are you relying
on? And you and I may see it differently in some of the things that you just said, right? Sure. I think you're right about the common sense aspect, big time. I do think, and I'm going to go back to another thing I already said, but like if you look at, for example, the state contracts, they're not reaching woman-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses, right? Less than 1%, was going to the Black community, and they make up 14% of people in the area. So you can see there's some systemic problems. Fixing that should be fixed. You should fix that. You should look at your procurement systems. You should make sure that things work the way they're supposed to do. That doesn't come with a tax. You can make it right without taxing things. There are a lot of things with equity, inclusion, diversity that can be fixed by respecting people, by making sure there's a level playing field, by making sure that people have access. So I don't think taxation is always the answer. There are lots of other levers that people can pull to make sure that the economy is working for everyone, regardless of the neighborhood, regardless of who you are, regardless of your background. But I think sometimes, to your point, it becomes easy to kind of set up a straw dog there and say, oh, she's your problem. Oh, he's your problem. Oh, the business is your problem. And at some point, taxing, using that as a tax or setting that up as a tax really just pulls down the whole neighborhood.
Well said there. Before I let you go, though, Emory, you've been a gentleman. I know you've had a long day. I'm sure you want to get to your family, and I appreciate you being a gentleman here. Folks, for more information, obviously you can visit HudsonChamber.org. Excuse me. They're located at 185 Hudson Street in Suite 2730 in downtown Jersey City. You can contact them at 201-386-0699, as well as reach out to them on email, info@HudsonChamber.org. Once again, that's info@HudsonChamber.org. Make sure you like them on Facebook, of course, and follow them on all of their social media platforms. Emory, before I let you go, I mean, certainly the year is just starting. I did look at the calendar, some good stuff coming up. I want to give you the floor here to plug some very exciting events that the Hudson County Chamber of Commerce are going to be involved with.
Sure. Our next event is Thursday morning, as I mentioned, in Hoboken. We have our annual business meeting coming up on March the 14th. That's where we all get together and have a business-to-business expo. Hear from a great speaker, and our program this year is going to be on artificial intelligence and how businesses may actually put it to work. I think there are a lot of us, even like me, who are like, what do I do with this, or how's it going to affect me? So unpacking that is going to be important to our membership. But our website, you gave us the address. Come check us out. And if you have any questions, reach out to me directly. I'm happy to talk to anyone.
Emory, let's grab dinner one evening. Again, I apologize. I'll be pulling you away from the house for another evening like tonight, but let's grab dinner sometime and let's catch up, bro. Keep up the great work that you're doing at the Hudson County Chamber of Commerce. I couldn't think of a better person to lead that organization. I've known you for well over a decade, going back to, the Palisades Emergency, Residential Corporation.
That's good.
Yeah. Back in the day, you've always had a good heart, a good brain on you, man, and you're putting it to work there at the Hudson County Chamber of Commerce. And certainly, again, God bless you, man. You're doing great stuff. Stay well and healthy. I'll give you the last word here tonight on Real Talk.
The last word, together is a word that we use at the Chamber all the time. The only way this works is together, and making sure that we're at the table together, we partner together, that we pull in the same direction, that we can come up with good common sense solutions to the problems that we're facing, and that we take care of each other. I mean, that's really what it's about. We have to take care of each other in the business community and all of our communities. And we do this really all in one sense for Hudson County, for the state, for America. And it's just a pleasure to be here with you today.
Pleasure's all mine, man. I appreciate being a fan of the show and a fan of my brand of journalism, and great talk tonight, educational and informative to say the least, folks. He is the distinguished president and CEO of the Hudson County Chamber of Commerce. Ladies and gentlemen, Emory Edwards, our guest tonight on Real Talk. Emory, we'll talk to you again soon here in 2024.
Thank you, Fernando. Good night.
Take care. Folks, great stuff there with Emory Edwards again. Hardworking president and CEO of the Hudson County Chamber of Commerce. Once again, you can check him out at HudsonChamber.org. Again, for more information, contact them, 201-386-0699. Once again, that's 201-386-0699. You can also email them, info@HudsonChamber.org. They're located at 185 Hudson Street in Suite 2730 in downtown Jersey City. You need a reason to visit downtown Jersey City. Why not? Visit them, get involved with them, and certainly check out all the great work that they're doing there at the Hudson County Chamber of Commerce. Folks, again, amazing stuff there with Emory Edwards. And, I say it all the time, going back to last year, the year before, these are the type of outstanding guests you'll see consistently on this program every single week. And again, I can't thank Rosemary Becky, the president and CEO of Jersey First TV, along with, Ashley Smith, the executive director, and of course the executive board, for their belief in my abilities and certainly supporting this great program as we continue to, strongly in 2024. The traffic to start off the year remains very, very strong, folks. And are you really surprised? Of course not. It's one of your favorite shows on Monday nights, besides The Bachelor, besides WWE Monday Night Raw, or the NBA on TNT, or the NHL on TBS. So again, we appreciate you making this a part of your Monday night viewing. Folks, before I call it an evening, well, you know what it's time for. It's time for final thoughts. And folks, over the weekend, certain things were brought to my attention, and I wanted to talk about three people specifically that I think need to be called out. Okay. And when I think of these people, I certainly think of guys that, let's be honest. Yes, folks. Ernesto Rivera Batiste, Joe Blaitler, and Leroy Flipowski. I'm not going to call him by his ridiculous screen name. That just sounds like a pro wrestler. And I think that's doing a disservice to the hardworking men and women that are actually pro wrestlers. So I'm going to call him by his legal name. But let's go one at a time. And it's just interesting because, when I look at these three, and then, I was in my kitchen over the weekend, entertaining some guests, watching the 2024 WWE Royal Rumble on Peacock. And watching that, of course, as I'm, preparing drinks for people, making margaritas, I realized I needed some salt, right? And when I look at this, for example, I look at, as you see it here, folks, okay, 26 ounces of salt. And folks, that's still not nearly anywhere near the amount of salt that these three demonstrate almost on a daily basis. Okay. But let me start off one at a time because I think it would be a disservice just sort of lump them all into one monologue. Let me address each of you individually. Okay. All right. Let me start, of course, when I think of people that are quite unlikable, right? What comes to mind, of course, I think about, Ernesto Rivera Batiste. And I think about Chiquitin over here. And I think about a guy who has been retired for 5 years from the Union City Police Department, a guy with a lot of time on his hands, and a guy that, loves to take shots at people on social media. Well, you see, Ernesto, Ernie, I'm gonna check you now. Okay, Chiquitin, because you love to dish it out. You better be ready to take it. Okay. And first thing I want to do is, I was going to set up a GoFundMe to help you out because browsing through your social media and your attempts at being witty and funny, I noticed a very startling consistency. And that is, for some reason, you see this right here? I'll read it to you in case you can't read it. A dictionary, right? See, you use this, right, Ernie, to look up words, right? You open it, right? You read it. I'm not sure if you can read, more on that later, right? And you look through it, right? And you find words. And the reason that you use a dictionary, Ernie, is to make sure that you spell words correctly. Folks, there's nothing more embarrassing than a grown man like Chiquitin not being able to spell simple words. Now, should anyone be surprised that he retired as just a police officer? Of course not. That will require Ernie at some point during his career in law enforcement to have taken exams to, get promoted, right? To higher ranks. Well, we all know that doesn't happen and didn't happen because, quite frankly, this wasn't around for Ernie. All right. So when you read Ernie's social media taking shots at people like yours truly, and let me just say this. Okay. It's John, John, okay, Heinis, John Highness, not Jamma Highness, Chiquitin. Now, again, I understand that, whether it's using a dictionary or what's called, wait for it, hold on, maybe you've heard of it. It's on your computer keyboard. It's called spell check. Maybe you've heard of it. Obviously not. Okay. And first of all, I appreciate you picking a really nice photo of me. I'm pretty photogenic anyway. So it's hard to find a bad picture, of yours truly. So in any event, I appreciate you making the effort. But again, Ernie, what bothers me is you've been retired for 5 years. Okay. Is this how you're spending your retirement? Like making childish, infantile, adolescent social media posts? about people. See, Ernie, this is the thing. You want to pick on other people. See, this is what's really funny. You know, you want to pick on elected officials, hardworking mayors and state senators or other people. That's not a problem. That's your prerogative. They have to demonstrate a certain level of poise, a certain level of restraint and control, and not address every single person. But I don't have to, Chiquitin. So when I feel like I want to cook you like a pernil, I'm going to do that. So here's a word to the wise, Ernie. First and last warning, because it seems like you're punching above your weight, bro. I'm the wrong guy to pick a fight with online. Okay? Because I'll be very, very, very straightforward. I can destroy you in ways you're not prepared for. So, you know, my mom and my grandma used to have a little saying in Spanish, and I always remember it. Ten cuidado con quien tú te metes, Ernie. I get it. You're very bored. I get it that you retired without any significant promotions. And I mean, are we really surprised? You can't even spell correctly, much less, I'm sure, take a civil service exam to get promoted, right? So I get it. You're using your time in retirement very wisely, clearly, by going after people. I'm the wrong guy to go after, Ernie, because I can cook you whenever I want. I'm cooking you now. So do me a favor. Stay in your lane, know your role, and as the Garak would say, shut your mouth. Because the last person you want coming after you every single week is Fernando Uribe. Because while you get, you know, a few little views on your insignificant social media page, I get thousands of views, all organically. Okay? Not that you know about anything organic, you know, but that's fine. I don't want to sort of go for the low-hanging fruit like you do, right? But this is the thing, though, Ernie. You going after people that, quite frankly, you know, I don't understand what your gripe is. You worked in civil service. I'm sure you're living on a very nice pension, and you're still bitching and moaning, bro. It's like you're being like the salty ex-girlfriend that can't seem to let go for whatever reason. Did you not get promoted? Did you not? I don't know what the issue is with you, Ernie. But going after me and challenging my integrity and challenging my credibility, I'm the only journalist in New Jersey trying to hold people in Trenton accountable. Because while people in Trenton are more concerned with pronouns instead of property taxes and coddling illegals, right? And tax this and tax that, I'm the only journalist raising awareness about it. I'm the only journalist saying, hey, we need to hold people in Trenton accountable. Are you doing that? No, of course not. You're home sitting on your ass, publishing infantile, childish social media posts. Sure, I get it. You get a little chuckle and laugh for the 4 people that like it and comment. And we, folks, it's all the same people. It's all the same people that comment and opine all the time for Ernie. Okay? So, folks, again, I don't know Ernie. I don't care to know Ernie. But if you can, por favor, do me a favor. And Ernie, listen, I have a few copies. If you want, private message me your address. I'll hand deliver it to you. Because if anyone needs a dictionary, if anyone needs just to know how to write and speak correctly, it's Chiquitin, Ernesto Rivera Batiz. And let's be honest, folks. In his adult life, the only A's that Ernie ever saw on his report card are in his name. Because we sure as hell know we never saw any other A's on his report card. Ernie, te estoy repitiendo. Stay in your lane, Chiquitin. Enjoy retirement. Don't pick a fight with me. I can cook you like a pernil. And probably I can keep cooking you like a pernil. I'm the wrong guy to pick a fight with, man. First and last warning. Go up into the sunset. Go whatever. Go food shopping. Go watch Netflix. Go watch Crisela Blanco with Sofia Regata. Go be productive with your time. But a bad use of your time is coming after me. Because I'll make your time really bad. Speaking about making very poor use of one's time in retirement, folks, let's move on to another retired police officer, and that's Joe Blatler. Now, folks, my point of contention with Joe Blatler isn't as egregious as with Ernie, because Joe's a pretty smart guy. Okay, I'm not gonna go after Joe's intelligence. We know that Joe worked very hard and was obviously during his time in the Union City Police Department got elevated all the way, I believe, to deputy chief or deputy captain or whatever the title was. I mean, it was really right below the top leadership position. And for whatever reason, I get it. Maybe you were promised a promotion, Joe. You didn't get, again, I don't know all the facts per se. This is based on hearsay. All right. But if you were promised a promotion and you didn't get it, well, here's the thing, folks. And this is what I think maybe Joe never likes to talk about. But that was 14 years ago, I think. Bro, you're saltier than some of my ex-girlfriends. Okay? Like, get over it. Same thing like Ernie. Okay? I would think he knows how to spell salty. Who knows with Ernie? You never know. But Joe, I expect more out of you. Because you've been in the business longer. You retired at a higher rank, and you retired clearly with a very nice pension because, folks, one look at Joe Blatler's social media, and you can tell he's been traveling pretty comfortably. And Joe, I think what's also, infantile, because I know Ernie's guilty of it. If I remember correctly, I think maybe you've been guilty of it too. Bro, one thing is taking shots at elected officials, right? You want to make fun of them. That's your prerogative, whatever. You need to do better. Stop going for the low-hanging fruit and go for like substantive things. But when you start going after elected officials, family members or girlfriends, or making fun of their appearance. I mean, Joe, let's be fair. Would you like someone talking about your wife and daughter the way that perhaps either you or some of your minions like to do on social media? Would you like that, Joe? I don't think so. And Joe, what's embarrassing is that like you're twice my age. You should know this already, Joe. I know it already. And again, I'm half your age. And I know about having some integrity and dignity and poise. Bro, you're twice my age. And you're acting like this? Again, I understand that you're still salty about not being promoted. But Joe, understand, and again, folks, as someone that worked in civil service for 10 years, I can tell you that if you don't get promoted, there are avenues for recourse. You can either write to the Civil Service Commission. You can appeal to agencies in Trenton. You can do something, folks, to air your grievances. That was 14 years ago. Now, Joe, if you chose not to do that, that's on you. But 14 years later, you're still as salty. Again, the amount of salt, and this is 26 ounces here, okay? This is nowhere near the amount of salt that you exhibit on a consistent basis. And that's what bothers me because you should know better. Okay? You've been retired for 14 years. Again, I don't know what you're living on. I don't know what the pension is, but I'm pretty sure if you were a deputy chief, you retired with a really nice package. You retired with a really, really good amount of sick days being cashed out. And again, good for you, bro. You worked for it. I don't got a word to say about your commitment to your profession. Okay? Just like Ernie. I mean, we know Ernie never passed anything for a promotional test because, let's be honest, can't even spell. But Joe, with you, clearly you put in the time and you took the test and you went as far as you could. Okay, bro, guess what? You're retired now. You've been retired for 14 years. We've gone literally through 3 presidents, if not 4, since you retired. Okay? And you're still bitching and moaning. Folks, there are some ex-girlfriends of mine that don't even bitch as much as Joe Blatler. Okay? Some pretty insufferable girlfriends. Okay? Joe, you're kind of getting to that area too. Bro, again, have some poise. Okay? I'm half your age and I have to lecture you about poise and how to behave yourself. Really? You should know better. You should do better. Whatever your gripe is with your former employer, I get it, that's on you. But at some point, bro, you need to let it go. Okay? Plenty of ex-girlfriends out there that can't seem to let things go. All right, I see it in real time. And quite frankly, it's pretty childish. It's pretty embarrassing. Joe, again, take your L's. You're retired. You're living off a pension. Yes, you didn't get promoted to chief. Okay. Boo effing who, Joe? Stuff happens. Okay. There's plenty of other travesties. Okay. Is this how you're going to spend the remaining days of your retirement? Is this how you, I mean, again, you're traveling, good for you. But the other part of your retirement is going after Mayor Brian Stack and, the administration in the city of Union City that helps tens of thousands of people every year. And you want to keep harping and bitching and moaning about the work ethic of someone like Brian Stack, who's the hardest working mayor, not just in Hudson County, but in New Jersey, folks. This is a guy who's easily accessible, who goes out of his way to help his community. Joe, can you say the same about other mayors in Hudson County? Because I can name a couple. I can name one specifically. One like 500 feet across the street in North Bergen that's nowhere near the committed type of public official that Brian Stack is. How come you're not going after Nick Sacco? I'm curious. Something you want to tell us, Joe? Something you want to tell us, Ernie? About why you don't go after? You want to go after mayors that aren't doing a good job or aren't doing their job and just there forever, right? In your words. Why don't you go after Nick Sacco? Why don't you do that? Oh, that's right. It's funny when grown men don't have awareness. Here's a 4-syllable word that the two of you seem to struggle with. It's called integrity. Try having some. It won't hurt you. Trust me. Speaking about not having integrity, last but not least, folks, let's move on to Leroy Flipowski. Okay, I'm not going to call him by his screen name. Okay, as a pro wrestling fan, that sounds like a name you'll see on an independent scene on AEW Wednesday Night Dynamite or Monday Night Raw for the WWE. I'm not going to do that. But folks, when you do a little research on, again, Leroy Flipowski, right? Leonard Flipowski, excuse me, right? A 59-year-old man acting like an adolescent. Now, folks, mind you, it'd be sort of the pot calling the kettle black here about being bombastic, because I'm bombastic for a living. But what I know is having poise and restraint. And what Leroy really, Leonard, excuse me. Right? And what's funny about him, sort of going by, his YouTube channel and looking at some notes here. Folks, this is a guy who has made it a habit of harassing public officials, for example. Right? Going into meetings in townships like Cold Spring, right? First reported in the Boston Globe a couple months ago, actually. Right? I'm not going to list you all the sort of infractions here by Leonard. Right? Now, of course, public meetings have different rules in different municipalities. Whatever Union City does, the town of Weehawken does, whatever Cold Spring in Massachusetts does. Everyone's different. But what Leonard has made a point of doing is going into Union City and being a downright nuisance, not just as you saw at the recent commissioners meeting, and of course last week at the Union City Board of Ed meeting. Folks, I'm going to spit some truth now about Leonard, okay? Because Leonard seems to be all sanctimonious on his high horse, okay, about what mayor does what, and making some really strong accusations against Union City Mayor and State Senator Brian Stack. Now, some people out there might say, well, look at Fernando, the Brian boy, sticking up for him. Folks, you don't have to be a Brian boy. You don't have to be any, you don't have to live in Union City to look at the work ethic that Brian Stack exhibits. And for someone like Leonard and Joe and Ernie to be on their crusades and sanctimonious outrage about mayors not doing their jobs. Folks, I'm going to spit some truth here, and I don't really care who I piss off. When I think about someone like Brian Stack, I'm going to tell you a personal story. Okay? In the middle of COVID, I had the displeasure of losing my grandmother a day after my birthday, 102 years old. A woman who was celebrating the community so much that the mayor, the board of commissioners, and other elected officials came to a ceremony to honor her 100th birthday and a street named after her. Brian Stack, Commissioners Lucio Fernandez, and others, other elected officials, other dignitaries packed the street to honor my grandmother, an immigrant from Cuba who left with nothing but a suitcase to escape communism and help make a better life for herself, along with her husband, my grandfather, and her two daughters, my mother and my aunt. And yes, they've become residents in the community, so much so that, again, Brian Stack acknowledged and understood the importance and significance of my grandmother. When she passed away, you know, it was one of the first calls to my cell phone after disclosing to friends on social media. Because again, remember, we were shut down. The Emperor Phil Murphy felt like shutting us down. We couldn't go to church. We couldn't go to funerals. You know, we could be on the street celebrating a career criminal like George Floyd, right? And vandalizing and looting, but we couldn't have funerals for loved ones. You know, it was one of the first calls to my cell phone. It was the office of Brian Stack. It was Brian himself. Fernando, my sincerest condolences to you and your family. That level of attention you don't get with other mayors. So much so that the city of Union City helped pay for the funeral arrangements for my grandmother. And not just because I'm special, I'm not. I'm a regular guy. But these are the things that City Hall in Union City does for its residents, helping family members during their darkest times with the loss of a loved one. If someone's struggling to pay rent or struggling to find housing or shelter, the hardworking people, folks, it starts with Brian Stack, but it trickles down into the hardworking men and women, each and every single hardworking man and woman at 3715 Palisade Avenue. That's the level of commitment that they have to residents. Okay? While other mayors were still, having their parking meters running during the holiday season, you know who was the first mayor to start that trend? It was Brian Stack in Union City to help alleviate the burden on residents during the holidays. You think Nick Sacco does that? Yeah, you start doing it now. It's a little too late, Nikki. You think other towns did it? No, they're following Brian Stack's lead. So you talk about mayors that are there for the community. Leonard, Joe, Ernie. You may not like his politics. You may not like his leadership, whatever. Folks, you can't deny his commitment. You can't deny his work ethic, his compassion to residents, his dedication to his job and to the community. It's not an easy job. I don't wish it on anybody. I don't think he sleeps. And when you're that out there, responsive, and attending to the community, yeah, you're not going to sleep a lot. But that's who Brian is. And I'm just saying because he's a dedicated member of Cowboys Nation, which we both are. But I knew Brian Stack way, way before I ever got into media. Okay? And I got to see who he was. So much so that David Wallstein, the editor of the New Jersey Globe, acknowledges the greatness of Brian Stack. Not because David Wallstein is whatever. Folks, he's the journalist in New Jersey. Okay? I might call myself the premier journalist. Folks, David Wallstein's the best journalist in New Jersey. And when he's acknowledging the service and dedication by Brian Stack, that should tell you something. Folks, numbers don't lie. Even though Ernie and Joe and Leonard like to lie sometimes, well, most of the time, if not all the time. Okay? Leonard, why don't you go after other municipalities? Why don't you just walk 500 feet to, let's say, I don't know, North Bergen, where streets aren't paved, where developers are running wild, building at every square inch possible, pricing out lifelong residents? Folks, while Brian Stack is the mayor of Union City, he's also a state senator. And you know what we saw in Union City and in the nearby municipalities? We saw new schools. Okay? Going back to, again, working with one of the most incompetent governors, and that's saying a lot because Phil Murphy's incompetent, but John Corzine makes Phil Murphy look competent. And Brian Stack worked with John Corzine and the legislature to make sure that we brought much needed dollars to Union City. How much so? Guess what? In 2009, they opened a brand new high school, still one of the state-of-the-art high schools in New Jersey. Building new elementary schools, building a new middle school. Folks in North Bergen, you know what they're doing for a new high school? They're simply moving the old high school to high tech. Okay? You think Nick Sacco in his years as mayor and state senator ever brought enough money back from Trenton to build new school number? Of course not, because that would require him to do work. Because it's easy to throw, parties, the mayor's ball, and charge people an arm and a leg to go to these overpriced parties, which, by the way, I go for free because I just walk in because I'm Fernando Uribe. Thank you for the open bar and the free food, by the way. Okay. And the centerpieces, which I like to take home. Okay. To then, at the end of the mayor's ball, going to Waterside, filling the pockets of Gus over there, that greedy bastard, as if he needs any more money. Right. But that's pretty much business as usual in North Bergen. Right. Why don't you go after him, Leon? About the fact that you haven't seen one new school in North Bergen, that the streets are still not paved, right? The DPW is sitting around, and in rainstorms, they're sending out like parking enforcement officers to ticket people in the middle of rainstorms. Folks, that's the level of incompetence and crappy government that we've come to know in North Bergen. So much so that Nick Sacco knew last year that if you wanted to primary Brian Stack, he'd get destroyed. So what ended up happening? They all met at Waterside, had a little agreement. Nick took the L, because again, you can't spell Nicholas without an L, okay? He decided to not run against Brian Stack in the primary because he knows he'd get annihilated because the records are there. We'll talk about the record of Brian Stack. It's right here. We'll talk about Nick Sacco. Folks, trust me, my hand's almost by the floor. Okay? You want to talk about municipal government you should be investigating, Leon? It should be North Bergen or others in New Jersey. But the last person you need to go after is Brian Stack because, folks, he's been doing, whether it's for good people like my grandmother, other elderly residents, people with disabilities, children, single moms, single dads. That's what he's been doing. He's been doing the work. Are you doing the work, Leonard? No, of course not. Because it's easier to go after people and take little pot shots. Again, like I said, whether it's Ernie or Joe, I'm going to say the same thing to you. You're a grown-ass man, dude. You're 60 years old. Okay? Start acting like it. Be an example to other journalists instead of just trying to sandbag people. That's not journalism, folks. That's just hackery. But that's who Leroy Truth has become to know him by. Now, I'm not going to bother showing you any videos from his YouTube page because I don't want to give him any views. But folks, you watch this nonsense and you bring it on yourself, Leonard. Okay? Listen, you want to go to public meetings? Not a problem. Clearly here, looking at notes here that you've been harassing and a nuisance in other municipalities in Massachusetts and Connecticut, Long Island, whatever. Hey, travel all you want. It's a free country. But stop playing the victim. Okay? You can tell Leonard Flapowski wakes up in the morning right off his pillow and thinking, how can I be a professional victim today? That's the thought process when it comes to Leonard Flapowski. Now, I get it. He wants to stay in Union City. He wants to keep being a nuisance. I get it. But folks, at some point, when you ignore him enough, it's like a little child, right? Every time a baby cries or an infant cries or a toddler cries, at some point, you just ignore him or her. Because sure enough, once you start ignoring the toddler and they're crying and crying and you just ignore them, they'll stop crying because they know they're being ignored. Same thing with Leonard, folks. He can keep up with his little antics, and that's cool. But sooner or later, folks, we just keep ignoring him. He'll go away and disappear, just like he's disappeared in Massachusetts, in Connecticut, in Long Island, and here in New Jersey. Now, who he associates with, again, I don't base it on fact. There's hearsay and speculation, sure. To quote, Leonard, it's just speculation, these are just allegations, right? I'm trying to get the voice down, okay? Then when you go to a public meeting and you're harassing people, at some point, a receipt comes. Here you are bitching and moaning, a grown-ass man, about having your iPhone removed from you. Well, folks, do you have awareness? You're 60 years old. You can make your point during the public portion and then be done with the day. But you and these other insufferable, it's really funny. These Bill of Rights scholars want to talk about the Fourth Amendment and First Amendment. Folks, the First Amendment, yes, prohibits the government from acting usurpatiously against you. Usurpatiously. Cuidado. Ernie heard that word. I think his head exploded. Right? Doesn't mean it doesn't make you free from consequence from regular everyday people who are tired of your antics. Okay? And that's the problem, Leonard, that you don't understand what you're doing is counterproductive. But again, have at it. Keep making an ass of yourself. Keep making a fool out of yourself, along with Joe and along with Ernie, because when you do, again, it just reminds us all. And again, folks, that's what I think of. When I think of these three who have a lot of time in their hands, again, to Ernie, por favor, chiquitín, mira, I can mail it to you. I can even, what I can do? Text me or message me. I'll send you a digital copy. I'll send you a PDF version. Por favor, use this because you're in dire need of it. And like I said, Ernie, first and last warning, take my name out of your mouth. I'll tell you right now, bro, you're not going to like me going after you. I'll cook you like a pernil. I'll keep doing it whenever I want. No me busque, porque te va a buscar un problema. Joe, I had the displeasure of meeting you years ago when I got my break with Hudson County TV. And I knew back then, and again, shout out to Julio Reynoso, who gave me my break in the business back with Hudson County TV. Okay, when I started being a journalist. And even back then, when you were blowing up Julio's phone about wanting to bitch and moan, folks, this is 2012. You had just been retired a year and you were already bitching and moaning. 13 years later, you're still bitching and moaning. You're as bad as some of my ex-girlfriends. And trust me, folks, if you know some of my ex-girlfriends, you know how insufferable they are. Joe Blaitler's getting to that level of insufferable too. And Leonard Flipowski, again, Leroy Truth with Leroy Truth Investigations. Folks, these are the people that some of you on our newsfeed want to rely on for information. Folks, I wouldn't trust any of these guys to run a Target or a hot dog stand, much less trust them with any information or any credible news. So, again, Leonard, do better or just leaving in city. You're not being remotely productive. Joe, you've been at this for 14 years. Enjoy your retirement and stop being a whiny bitch. That's how you come across. And Ernie Rivera Batis, like I said, the only A's Ernie ever got on his report card were in his name. You never saw them anywhere else. Gentlemen, do better because, for God's sakes, I'm tired of cooking you. I already did it this week. Do you want me to go at you again? I wouldn't tempt fate like that if I were you guys. Yes, folks, I'll tell you, it's fun cooking here. It's not the food channel, but I definitely like cooking on this program. Folks, and that is our show for this week. I want to thank the distinguished president of the Hudson County Chamber of Commerce. Once again, Emory Edwards, for joining us here this evening. You check out all of our great social media content by going to Real Talk with Fernando Uribe on Facebook, of course, also like Jersey First. Make sure you follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Of course, wherever you get your podcast at Spotify or SoundCloud. Download it and take Jersey First with you anywhere at any time. Folks, I can't say enough how proud I am to be on the dream team of Garden State Media. That's right, folks, it's Jersey First TV, always educating and advocating for the residents of the state of New Jersey. Brand new episodes of the Nader Narrative premiere every Thursday, hosted by the incredible Elizabeth Nader. And of course, brand new episodes of Bridging the Gap with AJ Malillo and Sima Rimbolo premiere every Thursday as well. Of course, brand new episodes of Real Talk with Fernando Uribe premiere every Monday night at 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. Check your local listings, of course. Folks, we're changing the game and certainly making a difference for New Jersey residents. Don't rely on the liberal establishment media. They're useless. We all know who they are. Matt Friedman, Jay Lassiter, Charles Stile, Max Pizarro, Pete Onelia, Alan Steinberg, Terrence McDonald. Okay. I mean, folks, Tom Moran, people losing faith in them. Of course they are, because they're not credible. But you know who is? It's always Jersey First TV. Once again, folks, I want to thank my guest tonight, Hudson County Chamber of Commerce President and CEO Emory Edwards, for a very insightful conversation about today's business climate here in the state of New Jersey. And of course, folks, I cannot say enough about how proud I am to work with Jersey First TV. I'm thankful to Rosemary Becky, the president and CEO of Jersey First TV, certainly Ashley Smith, the executive director, the executive board that believes in my abilities and certainly continues to show support for this show. I couldn't thank you enough, ladies and gentlemen, for again always believing in Real Talk here on Jersey First. I'll continue to bring you the best programming every Monday night, folks. You always rely on me to tell you, well, really tell it like it is, and to really help enlighten you about what's going on in today's politics, business community, everything else. And of course, all the frauds out there in journalism, of course, all the frauds out there in social media as well. Folks, always remember, it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid. It's Real Talk right here with Jersey First TV. I am New Jersey's premier award-winning journalist, top 50 Latino, as voted on by the Latino Spirit Online magazine, along with the United States Latino Affairs Initiative. Without a doubt, I will continue to be the weapon of mass disruption in Garden State media, because my level of honesty is necessary in this era of deception. It's me, Fernando Uribe, folks. Enjoy the rest of January. We'll see you next week here, folks, as we start the month of February. Hey, a lot to talk about. It's election season. We'll cover that and much more, once again, on Real Talk with Jersey First TV. And thanks for stopping by.